Hello. I asked for your opinions on whether to keep the sapwood down the edge of the fretboard, and I got lots of opinions, and thank you. Some people thought that I'd already made up my mind. That really wasn't the case, and in fact only a few minutes ago I was still totting up the results to see which way the vote had gone. I went for that poll because I was having trouble making up my mind, and the sapwood video I did, well, the sapwood video, it was based on, I wasn't entirely sure some people were basing their decision on just the fact that you're supposed to get rid of the sapwood because that's what one does. I did not make that video because I'd already made up my mind. Okay, just yeah. Right. So, what were the results? There was a poll and there were comments. Now, in the poll, we were within a whisker of being in favour of heartwood 52% to 48%. I think it was actually 53. But as we all know, 52% is not a mandate to go charging into something which one might then regret. The comments, however, were much more in favour of the sapwood. There were a few points in the comments which I've sort of addressed within the sapwood video, but there were a couple of extra comments in there. Well, there was a comment that suggested that using the sapwood might affect the tone. I don't think that person was being serious, were they? Were you? Anyway, the other comment was about the grain direction. That by skewing the fretboard slightly so that this edge is down the one edge, as obviously the fretboard tapers, that I'd be affecting the structural integrity because the grain is going to be twisted. It's only going to be 0.9 of a degree, and 0.9 of a degree is nothing. This is what the angle difference looks like. It is very small, 90.9. Show me a fretboard that has such straight grain that it doesn't deviate from the centre by more than 0.9 of a degree. Actually, in this, there is a slight curl in the grain here, which is way more than 0.9 of a degree. And having said that, if we can trust that these streaks are in line with the grain, actually, this streak here is going off that way. I don't know whether you can see that, but by twisting it slightly, this will actually put this streak probably, I haven't worked it out exactly, but it's probably going to be pretty much straight down the neck. So 0.9 of a degree is nothing. It's not something I'm worried about. The other thing that I think several people have made this comment about putting it the other way round so that the sapwood was on the dot marker, the left-hand side, the upper edge of the fretboard where the dot markers are. And I love that idea in principle, but it won't marry up with the headstock in the same way. We won't have this continuation of sapwood, which I really like. So although I loved that suggestion, I think if the headstock had been different, I would have gone for that, and I probably will do it in a future guitar. In fact, if I get the right fretboard, I might plan it from the start so that we have black. I just love the idea of black dot markers, ebony dot markers in an ebony fretboard. That's kind of strangely perverse. So we are going with the sapwood, and it will be here like this. And the fretboard will be orientated like this, which means there's a small technical difficulty to begin with. The first thing I'm going to do is create the plan shape, rough saw it, and then plane it to within 1 millimetre of its final dimension. But there is a very slight cup on this, and it's 6.8 millimetres already. I don't want it to go below 6.8 millimetres. Now, normally, to flatten something, I'd put it down concave side down, so it's nice and stable. I'd then plane the top flat by presumably taking the middle crown off it. I could then flip it over and then plane it, so planing the edges down and get it square that way. I don't want to do that because I think I'll end up taking too much thickness of it. So I've got to get it stable in with convex side down. At the moment it wobbles, as you can see. So somehow I've got to get that secure enough to plane the bottom flat. And what I might do, I've got this clamping caul, which is effectively a very shallow radius block with cork on it. I'm hoping that the cork will provide enough friction that it will just hold it there, and that it will keep it straight enough that we're not flexing and creating a bit of a banana shape. Hopefully that will be all right, but we'll see. We'll effectively take some of the cup away by making it thinner to the proper plan shape. But let's get on and get the plan shape sorted out, and then we'll worry about the planing of it. That's my nut position, and I want my 20th fret position. The 20th fret will not be the end of the fretboard, it'll be the 20th fret, but that's the I'm having 45mm at the nut and 60mm at the 20th fret. So this is 24, 3, 2, 1, 0. Measure, measure, cut. I nearly got that wrong. It would have only meant a fraction difference in the width. I'm trying to measure 60 at the 20th fret. It will get cut off at the 21st fret once I've slotted it. Whether or not I'll be slotting it today, I'm not sure yet. We'll see how the time goes. But I actually put the line in the wrong place. The line here is not a cut line. The line here is just purely to measure the width of the fretboard. Yeah. It's certainly easier to see, but this is not a very accurate way of marking. I don't know whether you can see this. The cupping. Can you see the gap? Ah yes, I think it can. The cupping is almost entirely this bit here that's going to get cut away. There's a sort of a bend that occurs just here. That is pretty much flat. Whereas if we go the full width, we've got a bit of a gap. And I'm going to be cutting all that away. So bonus. I'm now straight. I'm 61.1 there and 46.3 there. So we're going to take 1.2mm off. Well, let's say just less than a millimetre off there and a little bit less than a millimetre off there, and we're there. Oops. Sorry for anybody listening with headphones. .59, so I'm going to leave it at that, and it's 60 point something up here. Oh, 60.59, how about that? So that's fine, that half a millimetre could easily be lost during finishing, so that's fine. Let's get this flat. Because I've taken most of the cupping out of it, this is now pretty stable. So just preparing the surface, I'll just stick it down on the bench the normal way, plane it, and yes, my bench is flat. This is just a surfacing cut. This is the underside that I'm not putting a radius on, and having measured it I'm probably going to be taking stuff off here probably, but we'll see. It all seems to be coming off this edge. Actually, that might be all it needed. I'm just taking a bit off there and down this edge. This is still, don't want it too shiny. I can still feel some tool marks in here a little bit. I'll take a bit more off. The blade's set so low it's really not taking much off at all, but probably happy with that actually. Right, let's glue that down, I think. Same method as before, super glue and masking tape. And of course we've already got a very slight radius in this, although I think it's less than I anticipated because we've cut most of the radius timber away. But there is a very, very slight radius in it. I'm going to plane the initial approximation of a radius into it, and then I'm going to use the sanding blocks to refine it. I've got to be a little bit careful having done the plan shape first, because this is diverging. If I plane parallel to the edges, I'll get a compound radius because it will be a tighter radius here than here, which some people may prefer, but that's not what I'm going for here. I just want a constant 12-inch radius all the way down. So I'm going to have to keep parallel with the centre line. I wonder actually if I ought to mark the centre line on, but I'm going to eyeball it. I'm not going precise to begin with. I'm just going to take a little bit off each edge, just a 5-degree angle, because 5 degrees is what the angle at the edges. And and then we'll refine it using the sanding block. I'm just using judgment here. We're now very close up here, perhaps almost spot on, and we're close here, but we've still got a little bit to do, but I think we're close enough that I'm going to go to the sanding block. This is my radius block. I've put masking tape on there and just give it a quick burnish. And then super glue, CA glue. Spread that around. Sandpaper and a rolling pin. A rolling pin that isn't quite long enough. Here's a quick tip. Once you can scrape the whole of the fretboard, get all of the dust off the fretboard, and not leave a very slight dusting in the middle of the fretboard like I've done there. Although obviously you've got to keep the radius gauge vertical. So I'm not quite done because there is a very fine line of dust down the middle. So a little bit more sanding to do. So that was 80 grit, this is 150 grit, this is the paper that's on my thickness sander. I got there, the decision was made, and I executed. It took me a little bit of effort to get the 80 grit scratches out, a little bit more than what you saw in the video, but I've got there and I'm happy with the result. It's now 150 grit. I will go to finer grits later, but I don't want to take too much off at this stage because probably with inlaying and a little bit of extra finishing, a little bit more will come off. I'm 6.3 millimeters now, right down the middle of the fretboard. Because this is a constant radius, I have actually got very slight taper down the edge of the fretboard. We're close to 5mm down here, but we're 5.3 up here. 5.7 up here, and 5.4 down here. 0.3 of a millimetre difference. It's thinner on the edges there than it is there, which is a natural consequence of having it constant thickness down the middle and a constant radius all the way down, because down here you're further away from the centre, so it's going to get thinner and thinner and thinner as you go towards the edges. I'd never really thought about that before, and I'm wondering whether you can see that on other guitars. It's only 0.3 of a millimetre. Actually, of course, this part of this is going to get chopped off here, but so it won't be quite 0.3 of a millimetre, maybe a quarter of a millimetre. I wonder if you can see that on other guitars. Is anybody actually bothered by this? It had never occurred to me before. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I just wonder whether it might be an idea taking a little bit more off this end so that the edge looks the same thickness all the way along. I don't know. I don't think it matters, but it's something that's never occurred to me before. I will go and check it on some other guitars. See if I can observe this this feature. Overthinking this probably. Anyway, there is the neck. I hope you all approve. If you don't, tough. It's my guitar. See you in the next video. Bye.